ask you a favor.
I don't think we Yeah, I'll try.
Just actions, okay?
Just act.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Thank you.
This is Ethernet.
Yes. He's still not in.
When I sat here, I kind of figured it.
What?
When I sat here, I kind of figured I'd be asked.
That's when chairs are trying to be, very pleading and very cute, right? Asking for this sort of favor. Yeah. Anyway. Oh, we have time. We have 1 minute past. Go. You're doing the chair slide, right?
Excellent. Actually, where is the... Right. Hi. Welcome to SML. We're going to note well in 3-point font. Everyone has read this, but make sure to read it again. I'll give you 10 seconds. Also,
Edward directors, please don't report us to Note Well, please.
Okay.
we have found a note taker. We don't need to ask for it for anyone. We have notes and meet echo as usual. Everyone is signed in, I hope. And we have an agenda. Any requested changes? This is the first part, simple part.
Okay, so we actually have 4 presentations and probably don't have enough time. So what Ant and I decided is we'll do the trust document first. Then we'll do the vacation notices that was skipped last time. Then we'll have use cases by Ben. And then we'll go to the core document. So yeah, we'll try to fit everything in. If it doesn't work, then the last one will get dropped. So we'll at least try to rotate documents, and maybe it's a note for chairs to request a bigger slot next time. So
Right. Very preliminarily, we hope to do vacation at about 10 minutes past the hour. We'll see. Everyone be quick and not bike shed too much. That's it.
and now Ant will go to Naughty Box because you're presenter. Just go there.
We'll go.
So
go where?
my apologies for silly humor on Friday.
No, click.
Oh, you want? Hold on. I need to change that.
A new deck is being shared. Good.
You should have control now.
Trust and security, blah, blah. We discussed this at length a few months ago. Thanks to Lisa in particular for screwing my head on right. The document is now much shorter than it was and covers only what's in the charter. Like that, it made the document a lot less conflicted. The document could use another round of review. I'm also not sure whether it should contain a review of the threat landscape. That's not in the charter. It seems a good idea to me based on the text, but I'm not sure it should be there. Mildly in favor myself. The overview says essentially the same as on this slide. What kind of problems exist? It's there mostly for sanity checking implementations. No one has pointed out any new sections that should be in there, so I assume it's comprehensive. Formal display means to display the part that is in structured data. Falling back to the HTML representation or even the text plain representation is an alternative. Today, Gmail in particular has a complicated test for whether to display structured data. The trust document has a similar three-part test. As individual contributor, I'm unhappy with that and would like to change the recommendation to simply do the same as is done for example, calendar invitations. I think that a message that contains a ticket that gives you a button to add it to your wallet should be treated pretty much like a message that.
Speak up in the mic.
Oh,
You're not
sorry.
being heard remotely. So.
Let me adjust the mic slightly. Now, better? Sorry, Ben and others. I think that two messages that contain a button should be treated equivalently, even though the syntax in the message is different. Having different user experience merely because of a difference in MIME structure is bad, so I would like to change that. There's also a question of whether something that's purely display should require a test over and above. Is this spam? Not clear to me. I wrote about it on the list, didn't get any response that I can remember. The question remains. We'll see. The current test is as shown. It doesn't define what a trusted sender is. Different mail services have different conceptions of trust. The second is whether the message is in a thread with a trusted message. This applies to calendars, calendar invitations in the group right now. And the third is the connection via a third-party data structure, really, such as the calendar. A lot of systems today will treat a calendar reply as trustworthy if the event they relate to is already in the calendar. Mauro suggested that I might have misunderstood that. Someone else whose name I've forgotten suggested that I had understood that correctly. That's the text in the draft anyway.
Question. Do you want questions now or now?
I would like questions now, yes.
Hello, thanks for this. I just want to be clear about the trust part that you described. It sounds like you're saying senders and messages can both be trusted. And I wanted to understand whether that means that that kind of trust is orthogonal. So for example, could I have a trusted message from an untrusted sender or a untrusted message from a trusted sender? Is the idea here that these are just like arbitrary different signals that can be associated?
Ooh, there are shades of meaning of the word trust there.
Indeed.
I believe that a message from a trusted sender is always trusted. However, you can also receive a message from someone you don't know yet. And that message is trusted by virtue of, for example, relating to an event that you have in your calendar. Does that make the sender trusted, or does it just make the message trusted? I don't know. I didn't put anything about that in the text, and I don't know what current code does.
Okay.
Not much,
I mean,
much of an answer.
yeah, whenever I hear the word trusted, I don't know, I reach for my revolver. So that's yeah. So it sets off the alarm bells. So thanks for thinking
Yeah,
it through a little bit
I
more.
see that, and I think note taker. I think there probably should be some wording about trusted message as opposed to trusted sender, and maybe explicitly recommending that that's a one-way difference. A trusted sender can lead to a trusted message, but a trusted message does not lead to a trusted sender. On the other hand, I personally would like to not go into trusted senders. It's such a hazy area. Displayable. Hans-Jörg?
Yeah, short comment on that. So one thing we currently don't discuss in the trust draft, but we shortly discussed in the core draft and discussed at one of the prior meetings was if there might be trust in the structured data actually, which probably might be distinct or may overlap with the message as such. And there might be cases, and we had that example of, for instance, a white label email service used to send structured data on behalf of like a travel a flight agency or an airline or something like that, right? So I think there could be cases where, let's say, untrusted sender, not in the sense of spam, but not in the sense of not being known, will have some structured data inside which is trusted due to being, let's say, signed by an airline or so in theory. The question is if we will want to deal with that, or we just say still you need to be a trusted sender in that case, right?
Speaking as document editor, I would be very happy not to have an opinion about that and not have to suggest text, so I invite text. The text that's in there now goes very strongly in the direction of less difference between trust in general email message and trust in display only structured data. Do you want to say more or take yourself out of the queue?
Oh, sorry, no. If there's no further comment on that.
As individual contributor, I like getting rid of even the difference that's left and saying that the user experience should be the same independent of whether the data is in our format, so to speak, or in something else. I understand that this suggestion more or less precludes acting on JSON LD signatures. Not clear to me. Well, it's my suggestion. I hear a lot of silence. Or
Hi, Ori Steele as an individual. When you say JSON LD signatures, do you mean signed JSON LD or do you mean the W3C format that's used to sign JSON LD in a very specific way, because the term JSON LD signatures is a term that applied to a kind of signing format that's now called data integrity proofs in the W3C. So I just want to be clear on which you mean.
Well, actually, I mean that which Hans-Jörg has described as JSON LD signatures at meetings past. And don't really care which one. However, I think that the text in the draft needs to match other documents.
Okay.
On the level in this room today, it's really a question of whether we want the test for whether to display structured data to be more strict than calendar data or the same. If more strict, then we can go into exactly what kind of signatures are.
So the question would be, would you have a recommendation? Because we don't yet have, because this is, as Art said, is not yet prescribed in the draft itself. So this is still open to discussion. So what would you say would be, I mean, would you have an opinion here actually?
So as an individual, my opinion would be use the term JSON web signature to describe how you're signing things if that's indeed a JSON web signature as described in RFC 7519. You use that terminology. I would avoid the term JSON LD signature, because if people are searching for that term, they're going to find a number of other signing formats that have been explored and then renamed subsequently. Thanks.
I see the problem. I'm going to have to make a decision for this until, and we'll have discussion at working group last call, I think. Next level up concerns automatic processing, which is when a user agent performs an action at message receipt time rather than at display time. This could be as simple as showing a notification that, hey, there's something here that changes a calendar event, or there's something here that changes a ticket you have, whatever. Or it could be performing a change without the user's notification, without the user's awareness. It's clear to me as document editor that this requires a stricter test than simply displaying something. It's not clear to me what that additional strictness should be. My suggestion when I wrote the latest draft was that the text should match current running codes test for whether a message gets a notification. A message may be, or current MUAs decide whether a message is worthy of a notification or not. And it would be possible to reuse that test in order to keep the user interface, in order to keep the user experience harmonious with other messages. But it's very far from clear to me whether that is enough or appropriate.
This is Daniel, DKG. I am concerned about the explosion of text that would be necessary to write a specific normative guidance about what specifically needs to be done here. So, for example, if there could be updates that don't require to existing things that have happened from JSON LD in the past that don't require a change. So, for example, I don't know, you want to update the description of an event that I'm going to, that, you know, to clarify that there's a fifth person in the band, not just four. and I've got a ticket for the band, and okay, I don't need a notification for that. But if you want to cancel the event, I want to know that the ticket's no longer valid, right? And that I should, my system should figure out if I'm getting a refund, or, the semantics of the transformation seem like they will depend greatly on the type of data. And writing this in a very generic form to say everyone must get a notification, or these, like, here's the things that don't need notifications, seems very challenging to me, and risks turning this document into something that you can never finish. So maybe you want generalized guidance. I mean, the guidance could also end up including things like rate limits, right? I mean, you don't want some. I don't want to be able to DOS you on your desktop by sending you a mail every minute that causes a notification that you then can't deal with in time. I mean, there's a lot of nuance in here that's going to be
Right.
specific to the experience and the semantics of the thing described.
Right. I see the concern. On the other hand, I also see the need for predictability in the mail system. As sender, you should be able to predict the action at the receiver side, the result at the receiver's side.
Well, I mean,
So
that might be true, but that might be true per specific type of JSON LD. I mean, are we talking about a very specific thing? Like, I agree. When I send mail, I'd like to know that it's going to be received in a certain way. But the fact is, I send mail sometimes to friends of mine who are blind, and they just don't receive it the way that I receive it. I mean, the mail user agent is a user agent, and it will
right.
act on the user's behalf. And unless this document is just talking about one very specific type of structured data, I don't think you want to try to get into a generic rule for all possible types of structured data.
This is going to be very difficult to write down. I think the next revision of documents has to say that user agents that perform actions automatically have to, or should, take additional precautions or something very generic like that, which I'm sorry about. Hans-Jörg.
So this is Hans-Jörg. So I, like you said before, like, to align on current practices which MUAs use for similar use cases, right? And one which we probably didn't mention is this remote image pop-ups, which you have on a lot of MUAs when there is remote content embedded. And probably a solution for this one here could be that it won't happen automatically from the very beginning, but only after the user initially acknowledged it, either from the particular sender or from the particular use case, whatever, things like that. Just as a suggestion or idea. Clear what I mean?
I hear what you mean, and I think you are saying that it might be possible to use the three-part test for automatic processing with some nebulous concept of trust of the sender and or message.
I mean, probably with
which is RFC 1924.4, I think. 1925.4.
I mean, I missed in the current three-step processes option of an explicit acknowledging of the user, like trust by pressing a button for a certain case, like you have in this remote content things, right? So if that would be in that process, yes, probably it would be part of that same procedure, which probably would make things also more, clean and easy for people to implement. Because there would be just one procedure, right?
It sounds fairly nebulous. I'll try to write something like that in the next revision, and you can all beat up on my text. Oh, Ben.
So regarding automatic processing, I would be very careful. I can see 3 cases where it's warranted. The first one is if the user has explicitly approved it or previously approved it in some way. For example, if like Hans-Jörg said, if I said I want to see this and this from this particular sender, I want to always do that from that sender, that's okay. Or if I say I always want to update my descriptions of calendar invitations when the organizer does that, if I would set this as a setting, or if I always accept invitations from my boss, I can make a preference for this, I can make a setting. Or third case is if the sender is trusted and the automatic action is not dramatic, it's basically display only. For example, we extract information about my airline ticket that I purchased, and we store that somewhere away, and we do that only for known airlines. But it's only extraction, and we don't actually do anything.
I was understood by him, possibly. Good. I can read it. I didn't understand, but the computer did. No comment, but I will try. I understood what you said, and I'll try to work it into the text. You hear my enthusiasm. I'm over time. That was the last slide, I think. No. Senders I trust as well. Basically, it would be nice for senders to know how this is acted on, which presumes harmony across receivers. This isn't really in the document at all. Should it be? Should we try that? Or basically leave that out? Maybe an informative section. I'll write an informative section, and if someone disagrees, it'll change. That was my... Oh, there's some text I want to take out about use cases. The text is not much longer than the slide. Some use cases have higher risks than others. Yes, I knew that. You knew that. If we can't be a lot more specific than that, I want to take the text out, so I invite people to submit more concrete text, and I'll take out what's there. No comments? Done. Hans-Jörg next for vacation.
Hold it down. Hello, everybody. This is a particular use case for structured email, the so-called structured vacation notices draft, which we skipped last time in Madrid. And so there were some changes to the document in the aftermath of the Bangkok meeting and discussed during the Bangkok meeting, which I still want to describe. So yeah, as I said, that is the scope, and there is also a new revision of the draft online. Yes, this is some not very nice example implementation right now, which we have, but I think we don't need to go into detail. So there were 3 major changes actually done, which I will shortly mention. Basically, we discussed in Bangkok if it would be worthwhile to be able to distinguish between an individual being absent or like something like a role account, which, sorry, could be a service, like whatever restaurant you mail to or something like that. In order to, and then I think there was a little bit like, there was a slight feedback that would be nice, but it was also like, okay, it could be difficult. So the idea was to provide a suggestion for that so people can make up their mind if that makes sense. And therefore, I created a fully new section that provides a little bit background for the distinction. And basically, for the replacement, which is part of the structured vacation notice, which tells you this is actually the entity which you can get into touch with while I'm out of office. Basically, we changed that from a custom-made type previously to either a schema or person organization. So that would allow, for instance, a doctor to say another doctor is, my replacement for the time I'm being absent, for instance. So and obviously it doesn't need to be filled out all data or all possible properties of the object, which probably receiving clients won't display anyway. Especially in the case of I'm just saying I'm in vacation, my coworker XYZ is my replacement and you can get in touch with him. So obviously you can restrict to some very minimal properties. Then there was this thing, if you think about services, but actually also this is a case which might address persons. Current systems basically are based on the assumption that the person is away for full days. Like you can say, I'm on a vacation for a certain day or for a certain range of days, but as soon as you want to, if you have a more complex absence pattern, it's typically not possible, or you need to dive into CIF rules by yourselves, which usually users won't do too much. Typical webmail user interfaces, and I guess also most MUAs won't allow you to do that. They will just allow you to state full days and times. And so the idea was, especially for the service use case, of course, it might be helpful for services to be able to express, we are absent only now during the morning because we are just opening on the afternoon, or we have certain business days as sort of a recurring pattern. And there is within the said schema org types the concept of opening hours, which has a certain pattern, like you see it right here. There's other services using similar things like an OpenStreetMap or so on, which I think inspired that you found like that. And as I said, it was inspired by services, which have certainly that use case, but it might also be helpful for individuals because, now in, part-time work and home office situation and so on, it might be actually some helpful features which MUAs, supporting out of office might anyway want to support. So that's somehow the motivation behind that. And yeah, I probably just continue through it and we take discussion at the end because it's anyway not so much slides. So that would be an example of how that would look like. So you see here we defined within the draft. I renamed it actually from vacation notice, I think, to unavailability information to make it a little more, generic. So you see here the green things are basically the things that were changed slightly, as I discussed before. And so that's just a full example of how that would look like from a sender perspective, but of course then from a receiver perspective to interpret this information. Okay, I need to think by myself. So that's okay, that's probably basically repeating this idea of the first of all of the service, but also there was this thing, like in many cases there might be the situation, so like the vacation notice is a temporary absence, but you have this idea of also XYZ left the company. These kind of messages which you receive, and these are basically they are typically also solved by automated out of office messages, but they have a slightly different meaning because they don't mean the person is going to return, but they mean the person has left the company and you're supposed to update your address book or act in a different way. And this is actually why we suggest to have this kind of a category which you can say if it's either a temporary or a permanent absence, for instance. And this is actually the list of the values which are proposed for this, what we call unavailability type. So there is temporary unavailability, which is the normal thing, I'm on a vacation. There is permanent unavailability, which basically means, this is a mailbox probably not anymore active very soon, and, will be shut down maybe. There is no reply as a further a special case, which is also sort of an automated message, but also indicates basically that nobody will actually, reply to this message. You're not supposed to answer this message. This is currently not really specified. Many MUAs just hard code it based on the, no reply pattern from the sender address. But the nice thing here is with the structured vacation notice, you could actually do something like saying, okay, this is actually a no reply message, and this is a contact information of that organization. So you could provide a link or a phone number in case, you just don't want to give email support, but want to route people to some other kind of contact point. And finally, there is a case like you move to a new address and you want to inform people in beforehand, or in the switching period that they should probably not use anymore this email address, but a new one. Okay. So another thing then, as I said, there were a lot of examples added. So if you look in the draft, there is I think 10 examples or so of potential combinations of how this could be used. And what you see here is more or less a minimum viable example for no reply message. Yeah, so it could just be this unavailability information with that kind of no reply information. Of course, this minimum example wouldn't give you any option to display to the user to do instead. It would just help you as a MUA, for instance, to avoid or to inform the user when clicking on the reply button that this is probably not a good idea. And as I said, there is more examples in the draft. Next steps, as I said, I think if people agree to what is being proposed, this in a way is at least coherent in its current state, in my opinion. So we have implemented it already as an example, and it works, and it also works quite well with existing workflows to a certain extent. Before finally getting it to working group last call or to the ISG, we would also need to align certain parts with the core draft, but this is just a matter of fact. There was a question if it makes sense to rename the draft as well, because it's currently called, I think, structured vacation notices, if the scope is also for something like no reply and so on. And that's basically the state of affairs here.
I didn't discuss this with my co-chair, but can I suggest that if you think it's ready, we can do a working group last call, but because the core document is not done, so we'll just park it until it is done, and don't send it to ISG until the core. And then, once the core and trusts are done, then we can check that it's still consistent with them.
You are the expert on the process. I won't disagree.
I mean, we can pull our area directors. I just think, having an example before the core spec is done, reviewing it in ISG just would be weird, probably, isn't it? I don't know. How do you feel about it?
What did you just say? Ow.
Yeah.
Reviewing it at the IE, what?
I said that, so we have structured vacation notices, which is a specific schema, an example of, instantiation of how to use SML. I suggest that we don't send it to ISG until the core spec is done.
So is one going to reference the other? Like normally?
Yeah, it has to. Yeah.
I will hold it before you. I think Ori was getting up to tell me to hold it. So.
Yeah. I just thought that,
You can hit publish, but I'll put it in AD evaluation until both are. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it probably, you don't want to review it before the core spec is done because, if the core spec changes, then it's just going to be all odd, right? Okay. So, sounds like a plan.
We did even discuss that, and we agree.
Okay.
So, yeah, let's do working group last call. Yeah.
Sorry? I did, yeah.
Working group last call. Is it nearly done?
Probably yes. Yeah.
I can ask one of my at my day job, one of my team members to implement it as a little project. So, that would be super convenient, actually.
Okay. All right. Am I done?
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you for saving some time.
Next up, Ben.
Yep. Hi.
Yep, we're exactly on time.
Is the audio okay? Can you hear me well?
Yeah, go on. Oh, hold on. Just
Let me. Do you want to drive slides or do you want me to drive slides? Do you have preference?
Both, I guess.
I didn't get that.
I said both if possible. I don't know how well I can manage.
You cannot do both. It's one or the other. I can.
Okay,
you
then
can
we
just
just
say
do
next
it.
slide. I'll do it. Hold on, just one
Yeah,
second.
good.
He's still echoing. He said he was gonna use another mic. Has he got the right mic on?
Beep. Ben,
Yep.
you're slightly laggy.
Can you hear me well?
Mixed. Some of us hear you well. Do you have two microphones on?
Not that I know of. I will try to turn off everything else.
Jim, is it bad?
Is this better like this?
That's clear.
He just said he was gonna use a different microphone that was less echoey and it didn't sound better.
Okay. Is this good? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Perfect. All right. So this is about some use cases, how SML could be used. We are doing this with Parola. We made some mock-ups. This is not implemented yet, but we are planning to implement this and just wanted to show you a little bit how this could look like and what SML would be useful for and how this could look in reality. Next slide. So this is you might know this from WhatsApp. This is a little poll, so you can ask the people that are in the room which one of the options you prefer. Do you prefer picture 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? You can see how the other people responded. What is the most popular selection? And if you click view votes, you can actually see how every person specifically responded what they prefer. What you see here is an example how this would look like in chat. We're planning to implement this identically with the same component in chat and in email, and with the same data behind it. I see Daniel Glitch is in the room, so we would like to have this in XMPP as well. But so that we have the same feature in chat and in email. This is a very useful use case. Many people are using this in WhatsApp, and it's been really helpful in making group decisions. Next slide. A very particular use case of the poll and very useful is to agree on a meeting time between any number of participants. In WhatsApp, there is no specific use case for that, but we're proposing to make this specific for the calendars. It's basically a poll where the application knows that each option is a time, and I need to choose one of those. And knowing that this is a time helps the application to help the user to know how to decide. For example, at the bottom here, I have an option view in my calendar, and then I can see whether I have other appointments at the proposed time. and I can see how this fits in my schedule, and I can directly in my calendar I can click I agree, I don't agree, I'm not available. I can say this is possible, but I'm not happy about this option, or I cannot decide. So this is very helpful for organizing meetings. Next option here is Book Me. That is when I'm proposing any number of alternatives and the recipient can choose between them. And that's something that IMIP currently cannot reflect. So this could be a doctor offering many multiple options. It could be a general calendar, or it could be a specific message for this specific meeting for this specific user, saying, here, I have these 3 options, pick one of those. And then I see those options directly in the mail client. The left side is how I would pick the times. The right side is how I would see these. When I'm the recipient, I choose one. And then I see, okay, I requested this time, and then I'm waiting for the confirmation. And then it's automatically booked in my calendar. And in the other person's calendar too. Next slide. Another interesting use case is to-do lists or tasks. Technically, this is just a list of, like a bullet list with checkboxes. And you can make this hierarchical, but that allows a team, for example, to work through a list of items and to check together what the progress on these tasks is. This could be a very, very simple task management system over email, but it could also be integrated with a real task management system. For example, if my task management system sends me an email as a notification, it can send that as structured data, and I can then directly in my email client, I can check off the tasks, and they would be reflected in the task management system. And vice versa, if in the task management system they're checked off, I can see the updates here in the email, and I can see how things progress. And I don't have to click on the link and go to the website. I see that right in here. And then I probably don't want to have to find the email all the time. So what I can do is I can pin this list of tasks, and it goes into my calendar in my to-do manager, my task list. And it will be, this list of tasks will be in my task list in my calendar, and I can see it from there and see what I still have to do and what the team has to do and how this progresses. So I can more easily find it there. And it will be updated. There can be an HTTP update mechanism behind it so that the task management system can update it, other people can update it. And I see when other people check it, I see what they're checking and how this progresses. Next slide. Location sharing. This is also a feature that WhatsApp has, and we can bring this to email. And I can say, share my location with that other person. And for example, for the next hour, for the day, for the week, or forever. And then the receiver sees a pin on the map, sees where the person is. And then the application can do all kinds of things with that. For example, if multiple people share their location with me, I can see all of them on the map as points. You see that in the middle of the screen here. Or on the right side of the screen, I can say, I want to meet you at this bar or restaurant or coffee shop. And I can see with the routing, I can see how long I will still need to get there and how long the other person needs to get there. And the application can tell me that the other person will arrive 5 minutes before me or 5 minutes after me. So I can see whether I should hurry up or can slow down. And we can convene then on the same point. And that helps to meet physically. Next slide. We can take that one step further to go into the calendar. If I have an appointment with somebody, there is a location field. So we know when I have to be where. So the application can tell me with the routing, hey, you're going to be in 5 minutes, you have to leave. But I can also see when the other person the other participant in the meeting has shared their location with me, I can see whether the person is going to be on time, when the person is going to arrive. So I can go into the meeting and see that other person that I'm meeting with is about to arrive in 5 minutes. And that can be very, so I don't have to, so for example, when I'm late, I just need to press on a button and share my location with the person that I'm supposed to meet, and they can see in real time where I am and when I'm going to arrive. And I don't have to constantly send updates. I'm going to be there in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. That's the use cases. Ideas, questions? Does this inspire something when you do have questions?
You do it. Sorry, I'm kind of a little bit like, I think probably speaking like a chair. I just make an observation that some of your use cases are not currently covered by Trust draft, or they require extra things from the look of it. I'm not suggesting to do anything about this. It's more of an observation, something we need to think about. Like sharing your current location. It has various privacy implications, which goes beyond
yes, but that would be
just
user,
display.
yeah, that would be user initiated. So the user makes a choice. I want to share my location and how long I want to do that.
Right, Arndt, as contributor, we don't have any text or I think anything in the charter about users making that kind of choice now, which doesn't preclude a document about it or features to do it. But I would want to not do it now. Individually.
Hi, this is DKG. Thanks for this presentation, Ben. These are, I think, pretty compelling features. There's a lot of these things that I think people actively want to do. I share Alexi's concern that there's some parts of it that touch pieces that are not the mail user agent, and that gets a little bit scary, I think, for people, and understandably so, right? I mean, we don't want, we have to think carefully about the systems this ends up interacting with. So for example, I mean, you've described the calendar being integrated with the mail user agent. And of course, there are many mail user agents which currently do that type integration already. But, as messages coming in permit arbitrary manipulations of the calendar or expose arbitrary data from the calendar, again, sort of similar to my comments to Arndt, I think that there are going to be case-by-case delicate interactions that we have to parse out, and we may need to bring in people who have more expertise in some of those areas as we do it. I also wanted to mention, I said in the chat that for many of the features that you've described, I'm already doing those today over email in mail user agents that adopt the WebXDC specification. And that uses email specifically for transport for all of the stuff and gives you a bunch of flexible and fairly uniform user experience. So that may or may not fit with the specific technology that SML is aiming to do, but if the goal is just these particular use cases, there may be other ways to do them. So thanks for bringing this, though. It's really great to talk about these kinds of options.
Yep. Indeed, WebXDC is, there is quite some overlap between SML and WebXDC. I've looked into it. It's not exactly what I have in mind, but it's fairly close to that. What it cannot do is, for example, integrate with my calendar, because that needs the information with my calendar. Regarding the security issue that you mentioned, so the application would know, okay, this is this person that's sending me their location, and that person is a member in that particular meeting because I know it's a meeting participant. And this way, the application would make the link. So it cannot be a random spammer sending me locations. It would not have an effect. Daniel Gulch.
Daniel Gulch here. Just a clarification question. Would there always be like an HTTP service behind that to like distribute the data, like for example in the location sharing example, or would I send like regular updates over the existing channel, like email, for example?
Very good question. The initial data would be in the email itself, and it can be displayed this way. And then updates would happen via HTTPs. So the sender would post the same information that's in the email also to an HTTP server of their own choosing, and put the update URL in the SML. And then the client can decide whether it wants to pull these updates with the same risk like loading remote images. So if I'm okay with loading remote images, I can update the data, and then it can show the most current data. If I don't make the HTTP request, then I just see the email the information that was in the email itself.
But the data that's behind the HTTP endpoint, that would be exactly the same data that I was receiving
Correct.
like originally via email. So in a way, like updates via the existing channels and like pulling from the URL would be like interchangeable.
So the initial data is in the email. Initially, the exact same data would be on the HTTP endpoint, and then the HTTP can be updated, and that avoids that I can constantly send new emails every 30 seconds.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
So
thank
every
you.
little change.
Yeah, the question behind my question was that, like, because you mentioned XMPP in your presentation, on the XMPP side, we are always like a little bit hesitant to like pull data via like another protocol, HTTP in that case. And I think like, not me specifically, but a lot of people in the XMPP community would prefer if we send like regular updates over XMPP instead of like
That makes
getting
perfect
clients
sense.
to pull it from HTTP.
Yes, over XMPP, that makes perfect sense. You wouldn't need the HTTP, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Right. Aren't as individual contributor, we do have something that sends updates over email, namely how Office 365 sends reactions to external addresses. It's not terribly popular with recipients. They get an unpassable message that says, someone has reacted to your message. It's a bit of a pain, really. HTTPS, which is invisible to uncomplying recipients, is better, I would say, individually.
That was exactly the reasoning, yes.
Ah, well, yes. Violent agreement then. Have a fine day.
Thank you.
Ready? All right. Let me adjust the mic. Okay, so our last document for today, I think, is the actual core draft of SML. And I think I updated it just 1 or 2 weeks, I think, before the deadline of the conference. So a little bit sorry for that, that I couldn't do it earlier because it mainly reflects results from the discussion in Madrid. And yeah, as I said, it's the main specification. And basically what maybe as a high level information, one of the suggestions in Madrid was also to simplify a little bit the draft. So there were certain things which the draft covered, let's say like structured answers to structured emails, for instance, which are not strictly required in a first, core iteration. And so I think in order to make the draft overall more simple, that was now removed and is supposed to be resubmitted. I didn't do that yet as a separate document or put into a separate document. And yeah, so the idea also is, of course, to make it a little bit easier to also get it closer to working group last call. So we have a first, building block upon which many of the other things will be based on. So yeah, basically I want to talk about three things or three major changes that were done. So I already mentioned at the bottom that these sections dealing with SML replies have been removed for the time being. There is a new section now for the IANA proposals. So that was so far empty. I will shortly discuss that in later slides. And the first point, it's actually more a little bit kind of elaboration. So we had a couple of times the discussion about this distinction about full representation and partial representation, which for those not fully aware of that deals with the question if a message is, fully, or if the structured data is fully representative of the human readable content, which is sent as an alternative, or if it's just partially representative, which means like the structured data is just a annotation of a part of the data, but there is still stuff that conveys information to the user, which the user needs to, read from text. And there are valid cases for both things. And the confusion stemmed a little bit from the fact that, of course, in email, you can have arbitrarily complex MIME messages, and actually full representation and partial representation as it is defined more or less applies to the level of the body part. Yeah? But on the other hand, the interesting question for many MUAs and many use cases is if actually the full message or the complete, email message is, composed out of completely full representation parts of the of body parts. And this always led a little bit to confusion in discussions. And in order to make that a little bit easier, I would suggest to basically introduce a new notion, which is basically just a wording or a concept, which I called here for the moment, and I'm open to better suggestions, a machine readable message. And the definition of a machine readable message is that it is in its entirety composed out of full representation body parts, which means that a MUA can basically be sure that this is entirely machine readable information and do corresponding, rendering or actions up on that. Jim, I see you're already in the queue. Feel free. I switched probably to the slides. Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just a comment that I think we already have machine readable messages in the form of calendar invitations and things like that. Yeah. And just as a user, one of the things that bothers me about some of the calendar invitations that I get is that there's sometimes not text describing what the change was that's visible to me. I'll get an invitation to a meeting that, it's a recurring meeting that's been running for 2 years, and I don't know what changed. So if there's some way that we can have machine readable messages, but kind of encourage people to also put some end user readable content there, that would be great.
Okay, that's actually a very interesting point. Maybe first one step back. I think part of why this was, part of this idea here is that in practice, the assumption is that anyhow, the majority of messages in which you will get structured data in a full representation case will be rather simple messages that are generated by services, messages like you get right now already from your airline, from a purchase or something like that. So the actual case of having a super complex MIME structure anyhow is probably not the common case in which this will be happening. But however, this was really to make that case clear and to provide a language where people can really refer up onto in order to make clear that this is like a fully machine readable message. I think your point, Jim, is somehow cross-cutting to that, right? It's more like what happens if there is even a whole sequence or workflow of events happening, and how does, if I understood correctly, how does the second message in a sequence relate to the first one, right? which in a way is use case specific to a certain extent. Honestly, I didn't probably think too much about this yet in an SML use case or in an SML scenario, but it's certainly a very good input and something we could chew upon, I guess, for some of the use cases. And it's probably also something for the user interface people to, I don't know, to give some feedback upon how they, if they received similar feedback or have solutions for that. Okay, so that's basically what I described. Yeah, then a further simplification actually refers to the question of in the partial representation case where the MUA will still render the human readable part. A good example for this would be a newsletter where the sender basically wants the MUA to display a really nicely rendered artifact, but still might to augment that artifact with some structured data. For example, like the New York Times cooking newsletter, it's a very nice newsletter. You can read very nicely. But of course, it would be an interesting feature if the MUA would be able to understand that these 5 recipes are referenced in the newsletter and could help you with that. And again, for the MUA, it would be interesting probably in some cases to understand really that, if the newsletter is like 5 pages long, that, at this certain section, it basically, this kind of structured data is actually the recipe which is discussed in here. Or this external link is basically pointing to the website of this particular recipe. And in order to do that, we discussed several times already that there might be, part of the draft, the way to do that to tell people in the HTML part, you can reference actually the ID property of the JSON LD of that particular item. So the MUA can basically, do the relation between those 2 parts and do whatever the MUA wants to, probably adjust the UI according to that. There was a subtle sub part of that, and that basically related to the part if a certain entity is, a core part of the actual human readable representation, like, this is a featured recipe of the newsletter versus a recipe which is basically just mentioned or linked or something like that. And we discussed a lot about that because there was a suggestion to have another property where the author of the newsletter could basically say, it's extensively shown here versus it's just linked. And so again, the MUA could decide upon doing different things here. And there was quite some controversy about that. And so the suggestion now is to actually simplify that by just saying we don't introduce an additional property for that, but we probably provide some wording that people can just decide upon that by by choosing on which HTML entities they put this ID reference onto. So if it's just the URL, you could do it to the link. Yeah. So in that case, somehow that would probably represent the fact that it's just a linked, an external link, but there is no further mention beyond that of that recipe. Whereas if you put the ID on a larger scale HTML element like a div or something like that, that could be a means to signify, okay, there's a whole block of text dealing with that kind of entity, and that might be helpful for the MUA to take a decision on what to do. So basically, long story short, this is actually suggesting to keep this very simple, restrict it to this ID property, and probably give people an idea of thinking about onto which HTML element in the HTML part to attach this ID. I hope it was somehow clear. So another thing that was controversially discussed a couple of times is the suggestion of message headers and message flags related to SML. So there were various suggestions we had over time. And again, the suggestion here is to simplify things radically and basically restricting everything we had so far to probably 2 message flags, which either a MUA or incoming MTA, which is trusted, could set on that email so that MUAs could, leverage that information. And these 2 flags basically, as suggested, would be, is there any structured data according to the specification anyway in that message, which is the so-called has structured data flag, which has its sibling, as we said, with like something like has attachments or so, which already exists. So it's I'm not sure about the document in Mailmain, if it's already in last call or released. There's a draft by Daniel Eggert where this is included.
We don't need that, Arndt. We don't need that document here
No, sure,
because
sure.
this document can also register things in the same IANA registry.
Yeah, that was not my question. I was just referring to it for information, and I was not sure about its state. But anyway, so yeah, so that would be one of the flags, and the other flag would actually reflect to that machine readable message conclusion. Yeah? So in order that not every, in case a user has multiple clients dealing with the same message, like you have a mobile client, you have a desktop client, whichever is first could, attach this kind of conclusion to the message, and every further step could do that. I think another thing where this could be helpful if that happens on the MTA level, if we think about future extensions here, an interesting use case for SML could also be SIF filters, like you want to, apply certain filtering based on structured data. And again, for this case, it might be helpful to understand if this is a fully machine readable message or not. And so having a message flag for that could be a good building block for SIF filters, I would say. All right. Yeah, then we come to the boring part. So there's IANA considerations. Obviously for those, 2 flags and for this previously introduced content purpose MIME header field, which basically designates this as a machine readable body part, there would be, to my understanding, the need to register that in the corresponding IANA registries, for which you will find the boilerplate text in the document. I think I followed. I was not particularly sure actually for all of these fields in the in the template given by the registry. So if anybody already registered a flag, whoever registered a flag or a header field, might want to review that and give me some advice on some of those, because I just did a first version to the best of my knowledge, and yeah, not all of the fields were super clear for me. Also, like I think you're supposed to reference the RFC in which the header field is defined as part of the template, which I think is a meta reference, like RFC editor, please put the number of the RFC here if it is released or something like that. Yeah, second part of the IANA registrations are those 2 registries which we talked about. So, and I learned actually in this process, which I wasn't aware of, there is also a notion of a registry group, which I understood is basically something like a category for all the registries in a working group or in a topic area, I understood. I actually wasn't aware so far about into which registry groups the typical registries I work with belong to, or where I can look that up, but I understood it needs to be part of that. But I'm happy to get corrected here. Anyway, it's just I think a single sentence like we create this registry group, and within this registry group, these 2 registries need to be created. I start from the bottom. So there is this SML vocabularies registry. So the idea here is to inform users about structured data vocabularies which are around, such as schema.org, or our very own SML email vocabulary, or further vocabularies that might be likely to be used in structured email, of which additional vocabularies might arise over time or might be defined by further RFCs. And that's just the purpose of this registries, to provide MUAs and other implementers with an idea where they can look up these vocabularies, find further information, and decide if they want to support it or not. So that's the easy one. There is a second registry, which is actually for the particular vocabulary, which includes email-specific concepts, which we define here within the working group. So a very clear example for that is actually the structured vacation notice, which we discussed in the earlier presentation. So that would be defined in that particular registry, and it could include further stuff which comes at a later point. The boilerplate text for this particular registry is not yet fully finished because it's a little bit more complicated, and I still need to figure out some things with IANA on how this could be done in the best way. And yeah, that's probably it already. So I think yeah, once or if people agree or have no more strong opinions on the changes that were made, which, as I said, are mostly simplifications, which probably should be not raising too much controversy. I think it would be probably good to have more reviews actually of the current text in a way, to probably figure out if there is still unclarities or so on. I by myself find typos once in a while again. And yeah, there is certainly also wording which is not fully clear to somebody who didn't follow the whole working group's progress. So I guess as part of usual quality control, that could be something to improve. Also in terms of implementations, as I said, there is some initial implementations which we are constantly updating, and probably it would also be I think the things which are currently probably which could be under discussion right now are not ones which from an implementation perspective would change dramatically the way people implement it. So as I say, I think the stable stuff of the document already is ready to implement anyway, and all the things that might still move to a certain extent are rather minor things. And yeah, that said, I think it would also be good to proceed that document somehow to the ISG at a certain point, so we get, because it's a building block for many of the other things, and also for getting SML more in the wild and increasing reference implementations. So yeah.
Okay. As a chair, I think it's really tied to a trust document being done.
Sure.
I wouldn't feel comfortable sending one without the other.
I didn't also suggest that anyway.
Okay.
I'm not sure about the working group last call semantics. I think one can.
No, we can potentially last call them separately. Yeah, exactly. Before we ask a director to look at this, we can do it in any order.
I was not actually suggesting sending that to the ISG separate from the trust document.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So the other thing, I think, can you remind me why the reply section was removed? Section about SML replies?
Yes. So, I mean, the idea was a little bit, first of all, this was something we never actually got to in discussion yet.
Okay.
So many of those points, I think, haven't really received a lot of discussion. And there are some, if you look at the previous version of the draft, there are certain subtleties involved with that, like, this error code thing, you might remember what happens, and so I presume, first of all, this really, to make this really good, is yet another effort to a certain extent and would delay the document somehow. And particularly, I think it's not strictly necessary for the initial core draft, because in order to be on the receiving side of a structured email messages, first of all, this is not strictly necessary. So, we can still, for the first iteration, we can leave it undefined on how to reply to a structured email message and be fine with that.
And we have,
so it's modular, I would say, right?
We have a list of tickets associated with the document, so maybe we should create a ticket for replies, and in the current version say this is out of scope, we might revise it in the future. I think that would just make it slightly cleaner, that it's not it's not an omission, it's not accidental omission, it was by design.
Right. So in the text you will see that's already mentioned that this was supposed to be a separate document, and I anyway planned to, because the text is there in part.
I think I will reward it a little bit, but
that's absolutely fine. But so just to make clear, I mean the text is there. I just removed it for now, and I would just put it into a new draft and probably have it submitted to the working group somehow. So it's there again, right?
Okay, I suppose we can do that as well. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was initially thinking more of like we publish the original core document and maybe the BIS one will incorporate replies, but separate draft is fine as well. If we want to think about it a bit more, but maybe not as long as it would take to actually get to the BIS.
I mean, I didn't think about the BIS option.
Okay.
Is it feasible to do a BIS right shortly after the initial one, or?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we don't want to create too much work for FC editor, because but yes, it's absolutely fine.
Okay.
I didn't quite understand that conversation. You're talking about putting something in and then doing a BIS document immediately after that?
I think we are discussing final point, how immediate it's going to be, basically, yes. I don't think it's going to be right away as soon as we publish, we might take a bit more time. So.
At least half a year or something like that, I would say.
I'm still lost.
I was in the queue.
Sorry.
Aren't.
Don't panic. Don't panic.
No.
Not yet.
The final point here is that they are removing some text that might get added back later in a BIS document, or circumstances might turn out differently and something else is added instead in a separate document. I rather suspect that circumstances will turn out differently, and it's good to get this document published without waiting on things that we don't really understand yet.
So you can't wait to do it in just one document then? So every time you take something through the process, the things end up on the other end of the process may not be what you wanted. That's the
Correct.
That's the gamble.
That indeed. Personally, I would not want to take something through the process that we don't really understand.
Yeah.
Better to leave that out, and later we may decide to do it or may decide to not do it.
Yeah, I think at this point there are a lot of, there is some text we're not happy with because we don't fully understand full implications, and we're just discussing very speculatively what we are going to do with this text.
Okay, that I understand. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
This has been a fairly good meeting, really. Very little bike shedding. Or very much silence, put differently. But very little bike shedding. Ben, go on. Bike shed.
No, yes, I had some bike shedding where we can do about the message flags, but we can do that on the mailing list.
I'm going to quickly reply to you in the chat, but yeah, I think we should take it to the mailing list if it's unclear.
What I wanted to say in the queue, Arndt, is that I'm still not quite happy with the characteristics there, partial, full, MRM. I think that's a little too complicated. It needs further refinement or simplification. I will provide suggested text.
Awesome. Thanks.
So it sounds like we're magically actually on time and even 7 minutes early. I think last time we were just a little bit shocked that we didn't get through all the documents, but I think we requested 1 hour, wasn't it? No? Okay. Okay. Anyway, so, okay. Lucky us this time. Any other business potentially related to SML? That's all right. We know who you are.
So maybe not sure from the audience, same reminder we did in main. There is in February, or better to say it's the last 2 days of January next year, In Brussels, there's a FOSDEM conference, which is one of the largest open source developer meetings, at least in Europe, maybe in the world even. And for the third consecutive time, we are organizing a modern email so-called dev room, which is a full day, opportunity to present things, projects, whatever, among which some members of this community also are co-organizers like Arndt, Ben, or myself. And we invite everybody in the email field to consider submitting a proposal for talks there. I think that's still possible till 1st of December. I think you will find that probably online on the FOSDEM page. I'll probably post it also to MailMate and SML. And yes, that's basically it.
All right. Thank you all for coming. I think this concludes SML at IETF 124 in Montreal.
Slack chat. Jane took notes. Are your notes comprehensive enough? Have you learned about that promise?
Why are they not motivated to do tickets? Mostly want to
Okay. Yeah. Well, I think I made 3 promises and I like the value. I'm not sure I kept promises too well. Yes. Well, I was in the minutes and so there's something that wasn't in the minutes. Right, thank you.
Everything will be
Yeah, it's not captured. Anything that sounded like promise, but I didn't catch it. Yes. Like it's a speech. Right. I need to go and make a phone call.
Yeah, so yeah, I will try. But yeah, so pretty much the question is what place? What's in it for them? What? Yeah, and it could be as much as do it or you lose your job, but that's not correct. It's never But what I'm doing to try and motivate people to use our task tracker for things is that
Alexa,
have a task.
will you do the, or will you read from less than minutes later today, or shall I?
Either we can figure out.
Sorry?
I like, I like to just read through them and make sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I did a bit of editing and send it
During? Yes.
but I didn't do the full.
Well, okay, I can try to read through it carefully today, and I did that in Madrid, and it was good. Still remembered.
Yeah, because like sometimes there are typos, so people omit things which I think were important to mention.
But I do need to go.
Okay.
Urgent.
Right.
The guys who talk to you about that.
I don't know if you noticed, but I sent a reply to